And what were we talking about?
I've ordered a new microphone arm to hold the microphone, because this one is ancient. I got it very cheaply during the pandemic, and it is broken twice, and it is now currently wobbling around with a big lump of blue tack in the hole where it attaches to the desk, and a plastic pen top that stops it from falling over. So
oh jeez.
So I've ordered a new one. That was the long and the short of that.
Okay.
So we should do the intro. So do you want to do the hello, or shall I do the hello?
No, you do it.
Hello and welcome to Cyber Sidekicks, the weekly cybersecurity podcast hosted by Richmond Advisory Group's principal analyst, that's namely me, Rory Duncan.
And me, Christina Richmond. Hey, we hope that this podcast is your go-to partner for understanding the cybersecurity market and industry trends and the real-world challenges of protecting organizations today. Rory, we survived.
We have. It took a few days, I'm not going to lie. I think as one becomes more senior, traveling across the Atlantic in a coach class seat next to a bunch of other very large people takes its toll. However, we got here, and also we didn't get sick. We didn't pick up any terrible lurgy, but I know that you're pretty tired still.
I'm pretty tired. So, folks, we're talking about RSA, the conference 2025. Rory came over from Edinburgh, and I came out from Spokane. You know, for me, it was 2 hours. For poor Rory, 14 hours of flight time, I think.
Yeah.
And then all the pre-time and post-time and the buses, trains, planes, automobiles that you had to take, right? So it was a lot, and it was so fun for me to have a partner as we walked the hallowed halls and also the streets of San Francisco for RSAC. Did you enjoy?
I did, actually. It was quite an eye-opener. I mean, some people say the kind of folks that have been around for years and kind of get all cynical and grumpy. Not like me at all, but they often say, oh, well, a show's a show, they're all the same. Actually, they're all different, and I think it depends on maybe how you go into things. I think it's important to always approach a show as kind of a new opportunity. I know that maybe sounds like some kind of inspirational quote from LinkedIn, but it is true to say that, how you go into something then affects your enjoyment and experience of it. And if you go in thinking it's going to be bad, it's going to be bad. So what was interesting for me was, again, because it's a slightly different and relatively new area for me in terms of everything being cybersecurity. That's the difference for me. I've been to so many shows where cybersecurity has been a part of it, or has been sort of tangential, or, for instance, in cloud or infrastructure shows where it's a component but not really the focus. This was all cyber, which is really good to see, this sort of hyper concentration. And also to see all these different topics and sub areas of cyber, of which there are many, all represented there. That was pretty awesome, I must say.
And it's a massive, massive show. I think the end numbers that the RSA conference team put out was 44,000. They were thinking it was going to be larger than the past at 41,000. But if I'm not misquoting, I think I saw this on LinkedIn, that they said it was 44,000 people. That is certainly the largest RSA I've been to in my, 12 or 13 RSAs that I've been to. So, what stood out for me, Rory, of the 32 meetings we had, I just want to call out the kindness of cybersecurity people, the mission-drivenness of cybersecurity people, the willingness to help one another and talk about the issues at hand and how we fix them together, the interest in working across the aisle, if you will, whether you're a vendor, a service provider, you're an identity or data security, whether you're an MDR service provider, XDR service provider, or you're a product company, everyone wants to work, to make the world safer. And so it always really warms my heart when I go into the RSA conference and when I meet with people. So of the folks we met with, and I'll just rattle off some names, you tell me which you found. I mean, we found them all interesting, and we're doing profiles or summaries, maybe they are, of all the meetings we had, and they'll be public. They'll be out there for folks to read. It's only the tip of the iceberg because, we'd have to write tomes of information if we covered everything. So, Lunch with Zalient, really interesting identity and networking company out of London, but also global. I thought they were really fascinating.
Yeah.
What did you think?
Yeah, I thought that was really good. Not only was it a great lunch, but it was also great chat. Any of the good chats combined with a breakfast, lunch, or dinner were the best ones for me, I think. But then also for me, some of the smaller companies like Netcraft, who've been around for a while, but perhaps had been flying under the radar, or companies such as I don't know, Red Seal or Cobalt. A lot of these firms tend to get bucketed in the emerging vendors or startup areas of the show, but they're not. Some definitely have been around for a while, but they have solid solutions that they work away in the background on. Perhaps they have some kind of a channel focus as a strategy. They don't necessarily sell directly to the biggest enterprises. They therefore don't have the same kind of case studies to show. But nevertheless, they have something very valuable to offer. And in many cases, when you look at things like quantum or identity or whatever, they're becoming more relevant. What do you think?
Yeah, and it's interesting that you bring up Netcraft. Our first little summary / profile is out on LinkedIn and on our website about Netcraft. We met with a couple of folks there, and they, we'll be calling out some of these companies as we go, but what they do, I mean, they've been around for 30 years. So, they're not new, but they're kind of refreshing their messaging. They do phishing takedowns. They have threat intelligence. They do cybercrime detection. Red Seal, you mentioned, right? So they're a CTEM provider. And that is something that, we've been talking about and studying over the last few months. That'll be one that we'll be getting a briefing from. We just had a quick meeting at the end of the whole show with them. So we've kind of now gone from the very first meeting that was Netcraft to one of the very last meetings, which was Red Seal, right?
Yeah. That was. It was interesting to see what these folks do, even if it's a 15 or 20-minute discussion. You can learn a lot. I think somebody
can learn a lot.
Somebody mentioned to me that what is great about a show like that, if you are able to do these kind of back-to-back meetings, or at least you're kind of cutting a slice through everything to see what's there. It's like almost like the layers of a lasagna. I'm getting hungry, as you can tell. It's like the layers of the lasagna. Lots of these little companies, some not so little, but they all have these sort of functions, and then they kind of work together to create the overall kind of dish, if you like. And that dish is, better cybersecurity.
That is a good dish. It's one of my favorites on the menu. So we also talked with the largest, we talked with Veracode, which is AppSec, right? We talked with Trellix. We talked with Fortra. We talked with Opta, Level Blue, Trustwave. We had meetings with some of the much larger companies, but then the smaller folks like Andesite or Netacea. I think I'm saying that right. It's like Panacea, Netacea. Cobalt, you mentioned, Red Seal. There was a little company, brand new. Oh, it's called Seaside. And I honestly, we're going to have a briefing from them and we'll know more about them soon.
Yeah.
So lots of great conversations. My voice is still coming back from all of the loud environments that we were chatting in. That was the toughest thing, right?
Yeah, I know. I don't want to say which meeting it was, but I missed it entirely because where we were, it was a restaurant, was so loud. It was
Yeah.
literally lip reading only, which I can't. So, luckily
Yeah.
you were in the middle of that table and could actually hear people speak. But one of the folk at that meeting actually messaged me, connected with me separately on LinkedIn to say, "Hey, it was great to meet you. I'm really sorry I couldn't hear a word you were saying, and you probably couldn't hear a word I was saying. But let's have a chat at some point." Which I thought was a really, really considerate and kind thing to do, because I
Yeah.
kind of felt slightly bad that they'd got us lunch, but they couldn't really hear most of what we were saying. So yeah, that
Yeah.
that was really, really interesting. Very
Well, and
tiring.
so yeah, very tiring, but I just want to say that, we're following up with everyone with whom we had meetings or very loud lunches. And we're having briefings if we didn't get much of a conversation at the show. So,
Hmm.
that company that you were just mentioning, we are going to have a follow on briefing and a couple of chats. And I mean, this is our job, right, Rory? I mean, maybe people don't know what we do, but what we do is track the market, know as many of the providers, vendors and service providers that we can possibly chat with in a year, thousands of companies. We have notes that are, taking up lots and lots of space in our gray matter of our brains, in our AI note taker, in our OneDrive. And we like to put things together, people to people, but also we like to put together how is the market evolving based on what we're seeing.
Mm.
And this is the best job I've ever had. I don't know about you, but this is so interesting. I'm always learning, and I love this industry. I just think the people in cybersecurity, as I said earlier, are just very special, unique people.
Yeah.
And I've been in other tech industries, so I find
Hmm.
this quite unique.
So, Christina, somebody is trying to join. I think it's our first guest of the day, Nathan Case, VP Cloud Computing Cybersecurity Solutions at Clarity. Hi, Nate.
Oh my goodness, Nate. Hey, thanks for popping by. Really appreciate it. How are you?
Fine. How are you guys?
We're good. We're a little punchy, as you can tell. It's early morning here for me, it's late afternoon for Rory. And where are you based, Nate?
So I am based in Columbus, Ohio.
That's what I remembered. You're a
I
good
was gonna
Buckeye out
say,
there in the Midwest.
yeah,
Yeah.
a little further
I
to the
love
east than you are, I'm afraid. But yeah,
a little further to the east. Yeah. So listen, you're a fellow tinkerer, security
I am.
tinker, and I did not get to attend Pitch for Charity this
No.
year at the RSA conference. I know I've attended many years in the past, but we were swamped. And I'm sad, and I need a quick update. And our listeners have been hearing about it for about a month. So, how did it go?
So I think it went really, really well. This year was a little bit crazy in that the original people that generally will give like the whole MC and all of that at the Pitch for Charity actually ended up having to do some family stuff at home. So last minute, myself and Kirsten Davies both got to come in and kind of do the whole MC thing. But we had five really good companies, and we had SPLX, Turngate, OpNova, Living Security, and Gnostic. It was a
Mm.
great pitch. They did a really good job. So far, we've raised a little bit over $500,000 for charity, and we were able to go ahead and turn out some of that money this year and actually begin to fund some of the charities that we've all been trying to fund for these years. So it
So,
really went pretty well.
yeah, a half a million. Is that over all of the Pitch for Charity events over time?
It is. It's overall. It's since we began this. I want to say what was it a few years ago, and I don't remember exactly when, Christina.
No, that's fine. No worries. Yeah, but I think Sentinel One and Okta were donating $100,000 this year
Yeah.
to two well deserving charities, and I'm trying to find them super quick. I got them.
There we go.
CodePath, a
Yeah.
nonprofit that expands access to cybersecurity and coding education for underrepresented groups, and Hack the Hood, a community centered organization empowering youth of color through technology and career readiness. So, all right, so five companies presented. They each had about a half an hour. You and Kirsten jumped in to be the MCs last minute, which thank you so much for doing that. I actually heard you guys were fabulous, so thank you.
It was certainly funny.
And
I don't know if we were fabulous, but I appreciate the compliment.
you were funny. I love it. How many folks do you think you had in the room? Was it a fairly full room? Did you have a lot of CISOs? What's your read on the room?
So in the end, we actually filled up the room. It was probably about
Great.
50, 60 people, more than I had expected and more than they were expecting. We ended up having some people in the lobby even that we ended up having to turn away because we didn't have room for them up in the area. It was a hell of a lot of fun. Honestly, we had a good time, and it was something that the CISOs got something out of. Personally, as an individual into security myself, I was really impressed by SPLX and Turngate. I thought Gnostic was really good when it came to some AI level security. But I got to be honest, if there's something I'm going to buy tomorrow, something that's going to solve the problems that I might be seeing, I think Turngate's a really good thing to start with. It had a really good implementation / tactical outcome for me in the short order, which I was impressed by.
Well, and as a CISO yourself, right? As a head of security in your long history in cyber, that is a big endorsement. So, yeah. All right. Well, Nate, we're going to let you go back to the important work at hand. And thanks for popping on real quick to tell us about Pitch for Charity. And folks, if you didn't get to attend this year, please look at it for next year. I'm sure the security tinkers will do it again next year. And we might even bring back the wonderful Nate Case as the MC for the event.
Well, that's very sweet. We had a great time, and I'd be happy to do it again. And please, by all means, come support. If you'd like to sponsor, we'd love to talk to you. So thank you so much.
So this week's special guest is Rosario Mastrogiacomo, Chief Strategy Officer at Sphere Technology Solutions. Hi, Rosario. Thanks for coming onto the show.
Hello, Rory. Hello, Christina. I'm glad to be here.
Great.
Oh,
and
we're so glad to have you here. Thanks for joining.
yeah, and I must say, folks, it was great that we happened to meet Rosario at RSAC 2025, which of course a lot of the show will be about. And we had a great meeting, and he immediately agreed to come on to our podcast, which was very kind of him. So thanks for that.
Oh, anytime. But you guys also have to come to my podcast, right? That was the agreement?
That was the agreement.
It
And
was
we're-
the
and we're
agreement.
pleased
Cross
to. That'll be
podcast, a
fun.
collab kind of thing. We could do
collab.
cross promotional. It'd be fantastic.
Rosario, you are the Chief Strategy Officer at Sphere Technology Solutions, which does identity hygiene, which on the website says not a nice to have, which I love. I think that's great.
Mm-hmm.
Tell us about what identity hygiene means, just to educate our listeners, and then we'll get into it.
Yeah, so the way that we think about identity hygiene as a topic is really thinking about the center of all of the access in your environment. I like to call it all the entry points into your environment. So where are all of the accounts? And who are the people, the humans that actually own those accounts? Do you have a complete understanding? The way that I describe it to someone that may not understand technology is, I'll ask them, do you know everyone that has the keys to your house? And they'll say, yeah, of course I know everyone that has the keys to my house. So I said, well, what if I came along and I told you there's actually 50,000 more people that have the keys to your house and can get into your house right now? Would that alarm you? Right? So that understanding of, number one, there's all these 50,000 keys out there, right? And then who are the humans that have their hands on those keys, right? Because if you think about it, an account is exactly that, right? It is a key to your environment. I heard, I was listening to, I think it was actually your podcast where you guys were talking about how the biggest attack vector isn't some hacker breaking in, but the fact that they actually have the credentials, they have the accounts, right? And this is exactly what we solve for, right? The understanding of every single account in the organization, whether it's a local account, a database account, a directory account. It's surprising, but most organizations don't know where all the accounts are. They just don't. These accounts, these are kind of hidden in plain sight. So discovering those things is critical, but even more critical is ownership. Understanding, well, who can I tie this account to, right? So to achieve identity hygiene, it's really about really understanding what you have and understanding who the humans are behind what you have, and then understanding, is it okay or not okay, right? Do I have a service account that hasn't changed, password hasn't changed in 10 years? Do I have a situation where someone in marketing got access to a network device to be able to change a firewall rule, for example? Are all my accounts properly protected with the right credentials? And then ultimately a path to get you to that cleanup, because it's not enough to tell someone everything they're doing wrong. You kind of got to give them a way to get to the clean state, right?
Yeah,
Um,
it was interesting to me, Rosario, also that we talked about how identity hygiene is, it's finding the account, it's finding the identity associated with that account, it's discovering whether that owner, that identity that is associated is truly the current owner, and then remediating if they're not. Because when one wants to take down software or a system, and you do that without understanding the ramifications, if you don't know the owner, then all hell breaks loose, right?
well, so I'm going to make a bold statement and say that most people get identity wrong. Most companies that say they do identity management, identity cleanup, actually get it wrong, because they think about an identity and they talk about an account. They say Bob Smith is an identity. Well, Bob Smith is the identity, yes, but they say, well, I have an account called B Smith or Bob.Smith at Microsoft.com, and that is the identity. Well, that's not the identity. That's just an account, right? That's like saying that, well, that hammer is my contractor, Bob. Well, no. Bob is a human being. The
Yeah.
hammer might have his initials on it, right? He might be the only one using that hammer. Gets really upset if someone else tries to use his hammer. But that's a
But it's
hammer.
not Bob. It's
It's
not
not
Bob.
Bob. Not Bob.
And I love that
Um,
you're schooling us on this, because it is a common conflation, if you will, identity and owner, identity and
mhm,
personality, identity and name. You're right. They're two separate things. And I'm so
mhm.
glad. So keep going. Keep schooling
So,
us.
so now if we think about that, right? Bob has a hammer. He has a screwdriver. He has a jigsaw. I'm expanding. I'm running out of tools that
You're going to run out of
I know.
tools any minute, Rosario.
Any minute, any minute. But these are the tools. These are the things that Bob uses to ultimately, fix your bathroom or do his work, right? Ultimately,
Mm-hmm.
the way that we think about accounts and the way that I think about accounts is it's just a hammer. What's equally important, it is important to understand what that account can do. It's absolutely important. It's critical to understand the access that that account has. I argue it's equally important to understand the human behind that account. Now, inevitably, someone will say, "Oh, what about non-human accounts? What about machine identities? What about these things that don't require a human?" And my response is, well, that is exactly your problem, right? The problem is you've taken the humanity, you've taken the human. When you take the human out of that equation, then you lose something. And the main thing that you lose is your ability to remediate. You always
Mm-hmm.
need that human. If it's a machine identity and you see that that machine identity has way too much access and you want to remove that access, well, you can't just, if you're a security person, if you're an infrastructure person, you can't just take action. You need a responsible party. You need the owner of the application, the owner of that account, the human, to say, yes, it is okay. You could go ahead and do that. Or no, stop, don't do that. It's going to completely break a critical application. And our business will grind to a halt. So where the reason that I think the human is so important is that without that human, you end up falling into the trap that most, not just security, but all technology projects fall into. Finding that responsible human being that says it's okay to do this, proceed. And what we find is that a lot of times, whether it's a PAM program, an IGA program, an IM program, you program X, you name it, you get to that point where you need someone to give you the okay to essentially take on the operational risk of the change you want to make. And that's where things stall and halt, right? So finding that owner is critical. But then what you're doing by finding that owner is now you're bringing the human into it. You are properly achieving identity hygiene, right?
So
Real
what happens
identity.
if the owner, yeah, right, but I love that you're keeping the humans involved. But what if, Bob doesn't want to be the owner, right? What if the owner of the account says, I'm not the owner. I stood that up 10 years ago, but I'm not the owner. Then what happens?
Yeah, so there always has to be an owner, no matter what, right? And but you may get it wrong, right? And you could run scripts and you can manually find ownership. You always have to follow up that kind of programmatically finding an owner with actually talking to that human and saying, hey, I think you're the owner of this. If you're not the owner of this, do you know who the owner is? And if you don't know who the owner is, then I'll do some more work and try to find the right owner. But you have to find that human, that owner. Now, the way that we do it here at Sphere, the way that I've seen it done manually, is by looking at all the metadata, like all the data that you're collecting about that account, and all the additional data that kind of surrounds that account will point to one person. And typically, what we find is that it'll point to Sarah, let's say. And let's say we're talking about a financial organization, just as an example. Sarah happens to be in equities. Now, it's either something where this was the job that Sarah was doing for 6 years and she just recently moved roles. And of course, all the metadata is going to have Sarah's name in it, right? Because she was doing this for 6 years. But she just recently moved roles. Well, guess what? Sarah probably knows who the person that took over her role is. She probably trained that person, right? So she can reassign ownership and say, well, actually now it's Bob. It used to be me, but it's Bob. But even if the metadata is not 100% pointing to Sarah because she was doing this for 6 years, it's still within equities. She probably knows who the owner of that account is. Think about an account sitting on a server, a local account sitting on a server. You're typically in an organization, you typically don't have two completely different business units sharing a single server for two different applications, right? You're typically within, I like to call it the sphere of ownership, where that person would know, oh, it's not me, but I know who the person is. I could reassign it. And sometimes the algorithms are wrong. No matter how great AI is and how great an algorithm is, and how great scripting can be to try to track down that owner, there's always the possibility that it just got it completely wrong, and you have to tweak it a little bit and run it again and try to find the next best possible owner.
So, it's great that we still have a role, Rosario. I mean, in this day and age, so many people are talking about automation, using machines to do whatever percent of the job that company or that person is saying the machine can now do. But time and again, especially this last week at RSA, we kept talking with folks about, well, no, you need human curated information, human curated intelligence. You need the machine to do, quote unquote, the dishes. Like, for example, in an investigation of an incident, you can have the machine do level 1 and level 2 maybe, and then present all the findings and put all of that forward to a level 3 analyst who's going to then carry forward with the triage and the investigation. Humans are very much critical across all of the technology. And I know it sounds dumb to say it because, of course, we're critical. But I like to remind folks that AI is indexing the information that we give it. So it could be garbage in, garbage out, right? Gigo. Or it could be that it's been human curated as well. And so I love that you're keeping the human involved as an owner. Do you see a future where it could be a machine owner, could be a machine to machine situation?
It's actually an interesting question. I'm actually writing a piece about that very question right now, right? Which is the question of, can an AI agent, right? Because that's really what everyone's talking about, right? Agents being able to do things, agents
Yep.
being able to rationalize and ultimately making a decision about access, right? Could an AI agent own another agent? Could an AI agent own an account? Right, and make decisions. Now, yes, garbage in, garbage out with AI, but you could argue the same thing could happen to a human, right? If I'm
Yeah.
misinformed, I'm making decisions
Yep.
about that. I got garbage in, and even though I'm a
Not
human,
you. No,
well,
Rosario, not
maybe
you.
not
Come
me. I
on.
never make mistakes personally, but I've
Uh-huh.
heard it happen sometimes to people where they make mistakes. But I could have some preconceived notions of what is right and wrong, and I can make just equally bad decisions, right? The one downside of being a human is that humans are also lazy. They tend to be lazy, right? So
Yeah.
sometimes they'll make the easiest decision the problem with AI is that it's not lazy, but it can make a decision with confidence. And the human
Mm.
tends to believe that confidence. I mean, have you ever asked ChatGPT a question and it came back with the completely wrong answer, but it wrote it with such confidence, and I was like,
Such
wow,
confidence.
maybe I'm wrong.
Yes.
Right? Maybe
Yeah.
I'm wrong.
Yeah.
And the problem that we have is that if humans start taking that confidence and believing it without questioning it, then we lose a huge aspect of control, right?
Yeah.
And
That's
the
right.
reality is having an AI take over that human element of should this exist, should this not exist, it gives essentially completely gives up control, right? We're
Hmm.
completely giving up control to having an AI who is learning if this exists, then it must be okay. So if you ask me if it should exist, I'm going to say it's okay. You kind of need that more rational
Yeah.
thinking of wait a minute, you know. And the other thing is you can't threaten an AI. You could threaten. It's going to sound horrible,
Hmm.
but you can threaten a human to take action. You
That's
can't
true.
threaten an AI to take action. You could say to a human something like review this access, and if something happens, in a very nice way, you could say something happens, you will be held responsible for this. And that human understands that they are now holding the keys to what could be a breach to the organization, and they will be blamed for it.
Yeah.
Right? That they're taking some responsibility. An AI, you can't threaten it.
Well, I
Right?
mean, I was just going to say, you kind of can, and this is something that we brought up on one of our previous podcasts, which was one of the, I don't know if it was Google or if it was some of the Gemini researchers or whatever, had looked at, going back in where AI had given, had hallucinated, had given a wrong answer, or, it was following its instructions to be positive and give an answer, as opposed to saying we
Mm.
don't know. So they were going back in to kind of retrain it or look at relearning some of these things by saying, well, what you told us there, that was wrong and that's not good. So what happened? Well, then the AI stopped giving indications that it was wrong. So where before it had said, here's an answer, but it's wrong, it stopped giving an answer. In other words, it just carried on, but didn't tell the researchers that it thinks it had done a wrong thing. In other words, it was effectively pretending, developing that kind of ability to respond by not responding, because it saw that not giving an answer was probably the worst thing. I think for
I mean, it's AI politicians as an AI, right?
yeah, exactly, that would be great.
Yeah,
But
just don't
but
answer the question.
but
I don't know.
it
Just
does
don't answer the question.
exactly. It does come down to that, which is we can have technology doing these things. So let's imagine we have AI agents who are created by an AI or an LLM or a model that it owns effectively. It's the owner. It created those agents. We talk a lot. We've seen lots of companies talk about having digital workers and so on. If a machine creates them, there are no guardrails. The question fundamentally comes down to, do we want to do that? I know that's maybe philosophical, but it's something that we don't fully understand yet. Even those who are the most innovative and most creative in the area of AI, and particularly Gen AI, they don't necessarily know fully how it works. It's still a bit of a black box. If we're then creating
Yeah.
agents who can autonomously do that, and I think that's a really, really bad idea. But back to the original question from Christina, which was, could it be done? It can be done, I'm sure. But do we want to do it is the question. And if we do want to do it, then we need a whole bunch of additional humans behind that to then review and moderate the decisions that the machine is doing for the agents that it is created. It's creating another layer of checking, control, monitoring, etc.
Well, so one of the premises of the piece that I'm writing is around could AI agents be the first technology that does not require a human? Not
Mm.
maybe doesn't require a human, or it can't have a human kind of understanding what it does. Think about that what you were just saying, Rory, right? You have an agent creating other agents, but you also have orchestrating agents that are orchestrating the activities of a bunch of other agents who are orchestrating the activities of a bunch of other agents. The complexity of that kind of setup might be beyond a human's ability to even understand what it's doing. Now you could argue, yeah, but I could give you an application that's 1,000 lines of code, and not one single human can understand the whole thing. It's going to take some time for them to understand it. The difference is that code doesn't rationalize. Code doesn't make decisions. Code doesn't learn. The code is the code. It's written. It's a static thing that I could look at, and as a human, it might take me a long time, but I could understand. If we have all these AI agents, not just completing, pushing a button here, pushing a button there, but rationalizing when that button should be pushed and when it shouldn't be pushed, how is a human supposed to understand that? Can we build AI agents so complex that one single human can't understand? So when it comes time to, hey, this AI agent seems to have a lot more access than it should, can we limit that access? There's no single human being in the organization that could say, yeah, of course, you could shut it off, or no. It's like, I don't know. You shut that off, we might go out of business.
Yeah.
Right? And
Yeah.
that's why removing the human in the beginning and not even thinking about always keep the human in the picture could get us to that very scary state.
Yeah, well, exactly. And, we've talked, I think I've been writing about this as well, where if we think about what's the equivalent to, AI or AI agents in something like art or music, right? Let's say original art, original music, original literature. We've spent many hundreds of years trying to figure out, what is behind the genius of the world's greatest writers, the vision of the scientists, and so on. There's lots of different things, but ultimately we don't necessarily understand how their brains work, or why they are more productive than others, or why did Mozart produce the things he did so rapidly and quickly. But they were individuals, and the effect that they had was contained within a society that has norms and rules and kind of regulations around it, or norms or acceptances, and that's fine. Having AI agents doing many of these themselves, albeit within a framework that they can operate, means that unless you've got similar kind of societal guardrails around how AI agents operate, then there is no way to limit what they do. They are effectively like these kind of ultra creative types who we don't understand potentially where it goes. And I think that's an interesting one, looking at the similarities there, where we have something that's we don't quite understand ourselves as humans. How do we then make sure that it doesn't ultimately spin out of control such that we'll never be able to kind of control it ever again? I don't know if that makes sense, but it's probably
I
far
think,
too philosophical for
well,
this
I
time
mean,
of
it
day.
is. First of all, I thought a lot of the art from the 20th century was due to LSD and other
Yes.
hallucinogenic drugs,
Which we really don't understand.
which could be that. But if you think about the gold rush right now, of everyone rushing to, because everyone's talking about AI, everyone's using AI. Every company, every day, there's someone new introducing something new. That this gold rush could motivate people to not be careful, right? Could motivate people to say, look how great I can build something that can replace 10 humans. Now, arguably it probably can't, but let's just say that that's what they're doing, and they're allowing these or building these things without the understanding of what are the controls that we're going to put in place to make sure that we could actually monitor these things, that we know what it's doing. If you can build an AI agent as sophisticated, and it can kind of rationalize things as well as a human who you're paying a salary, then arguably, just like you have to monitor what that human can do and understand what that Bob and what his hammer could do, you have to understand, you have to treat that agent just like you treat every other asset. The problem is there's no single human in any organization that if you maybe there is in some organizations where if you get rid of that human, the entire organization stops working. What I fear is that we will be so dependent on these things if we don't keep the human element in, keep that ownership, right? That understanding, that it's going to be the point where, like I said, you're just going to be afraid to turn it off or even question what it's doing, right?
Hmm.
Because it could horribly impact
Yeah.
the organization. I worked for a company where we had an application written in VBA in Excel that was hundreds, I think maybe even thousands of lines long. And there was maybe two people that fully understood exactly how it worked, right? And the fear always was, if something goes wrong, if those people are gone, the whole thing will collapse.
Yeah.
And there was so much work to try to make sure that didn't happen by recreating it.
Mm-hmm.
I worry that, again, because we're not dealing with static lines of code, that could be a huge problem.
Yeah.
But not something that we have to be scared and not use agents. Just to
Yeah.
clarify.
Right.
No,
It's
exactly.
just
Keep the
how
human
we
in it.
do it.
Exactly.
We just have to keep the human in, and we have to have monitoring. We have to have the basic controls. But I, like you, Rosario, also I'm concerned that when there's a new technology, we don't always remember the security controls at the outset, right? And I think
Mm-hmm.
that's what you're saying is as we build these tools with agents, with LLMs, we need to remember the basic hygiene, the security controls that often when we have something new that we're putting into our environments, we don't think about. And so
Yep.
it's just a cautionary tale. But,
Yeah.
we've managed to come through all of these other technologies, sometimes having to remediate in a backwards fashion as quickly as possible. And that may be the case again.
Yeah. This has been a fascinating discussion, and I know we could probably go on for a long time. There's a number of things I'd like to follow up with you on, Rosario, particularly in
Sure.
what you're writing about. What has stuck in my head from this conversation, aside from hammers and saws and nails and whatever, is the
Bob, the contractor.
yeah.
Yeah,
Is
Bob the contractor.
is what you mentioned about art and culture. I wonder if is there a digital LSD equivalent that you could feed to an agent and see what happens? Is that the
Of
bit that we're
course you
missing?
went there.
Yeah.
Of course you
I
went
wonder
there, Rory. I
actually. I
love
wonder
it.
if you could do a prompt like that. You know how you could do a prompt. You are a cybersecurity expert, or you are the best contractor in the world, and now answer me this question. I wonder if you could prompt it. You are on LSD. Create some artwork for me.
No.
You know.
Yeah,
What it would
like in the
do.
way they gave it to the you've seen that picture where they fed spiders various different drugs.
Oh yeah,
And
and they were
see,
doing like the weird webs, right?
yeah, very strange webs, but they each had distinctive characteristics. That's an interesting one. We are spinning off way down rabbit holes, alleyways,
Right.
etc.
I think we need to call it
I
and
think
say,
so.
this was a great conversation, and we will have you back,
Yeah,
Rosario. We will happily come on your podcast. I love that we
Absolutely.
went to such a philosophical place because I do think that part of this whole future we're looking at in technology must have that philosophical conversation and the ethics piece of it
yeah,
as well. But on that note, thank you so very much, Rosario, for coming in and chatting with us today.
Anytime.
yeah.
Thank you very much. It was
Yeah,
great
great.
talking to you both. Thanks.
Thank you. Bye. Well, that was a really interesting discussion, Christina, wasn't it? Fantastic.
It was, I love it when we go down these rabbit holes that are quite philosophical in
Oh
nature.
yeah.
So that was fabulous.
Oh yeah. Absolutely. So more to come on that. Rosario is obviously very knowledgeable, and he is also interesting to chat to about most other things as well. So that's great. So hey, what else do we need to talk about this week? I think we were wanting to mention the newsletter which we launched last week.
Yeah. So our newsletter, Signal Not Noise, came out last week. It's going to be the first Thursday of every month. And yeah, I've gotten some good feedback. I've gotten some really good sort of constructive thoughts as well. Like what we need to be, how we need to be as pithy and succinct as possible. So we're very open to all of your suggestions. But Signal Not Noise has 7 sections that will repeat every month. It'll have the quick takeaways we call the gist. It'll have a market pulse with some data. This month, we've put in some of our AI security survey data. It'll have a link to this podcast. It'll have what topics we are tracking and what's on our radar and where we're going to be or where we have just been, like RSAC, or Rory was at the Cloud and Cybersecurity Expo. Coming up, we will be at many different places. I will be joining some cyber range conversations with Palo Alto and IBM. Rory, you're going to InfoSec, is that right?
Yeah, InfoSec Europe, which is 3rd to the 5th of June in London at the XL, you guessed it, the largest kind of venue for big events in London out at the Docklands. That's coming up fast, actually. It's in, less than 4 weeks now. So if you'd like to meet, let me know. And then perhaps looking ahead to August for Black Hat might be the next big show.
That's right, and hopefully we'll both be on site there because Vegas in August is our favorite place to be.
Yeah, woo! I know. It's gonna be
Right,
it's gonna be hot.
So the other thing I wanted to say is that next week's guest, very excited to say, is the illustrious Alex Pinto from Verizon. He was the head of the DBIR research group, and now he is Associate Director of Threat Intelligence for Verizon, still very, very involved with the DBIR. And I think tomorrow both Rory and I are attending a wonderful chat with Verizon to get the takeaways from the DBIR that we will then discuss with Alex next week.
Yeah, great. So I think that was probably it from my notes. I'm just scanning down the notes. But if there's, for folk who are listening, thanks again for your support. Please keep providing the feedback, good and bad, but constructive. Let's say good and constructive as opposed to good and bad. And let us know if there's something you'd like us to cover. You can also leave us a message. So you can leave some feedback and suggestions. If you don't want to write an email, you can pick up the phone, or not actually pick up the phone, but you can leave a voicemail through SpeakPipe. So that's, I'll put it in the show notes. So that's speakpipe.com/cyber_sidekicks. And we'll share anything that's not too spicy in the following episode. And I think that's probably it for this week. It's been a great one, Christina. Certainly lots to follow up on from RSAC. And it was great to have Nate on and also Rosario. So it's been quite a busy episode this week. We look forward.
It has been quite busy.
Yes,
Thank
indeed.
you so much, Rory. Really a fun group of people we got to chat with last week, and we will be talking with many of them in the coming week. Yeah.
Great. Well, thanks for that. And we look forward to continuing the discussions with you. And please feel free to tune in for next week's episode. Bye-bye.
Bye now.